All right, so this morning I woke up and I was trying to make a video, but I couldn't decide what to do. I was already late for the gym because I like to be there at 8 o'clock in the morning, and yet there I was waking up at 8 o'clock in the morning because I couldn't sleep. But as I slept, I kept having my constant panic attacks at the realization that things might progressively get worse for the proletariat with the Cheeto in chief. And I couldn't shake those feelings the second that it turned midnight last night and I realized what was about to happen. I had nothing but bad feelings. I was tossing and turning all night. My box fan has started making some clicking noises, which meant that it was at the end of its rope, which means I needed to replace it. I have to buy a new box fan probably every couple of years because they just get so dirty, so nasty dirty. Anyhow, as I thought about that, I woke up, I rolled out of bed, and one of the very first videos that I saw was a financial channel that was talking about being middle class. And as a person who's been lower class my whole life, when I got my current job, my promotion at my current job more than 3 years ago, I thought that I was finally going to be part of that class, right? It's the first time in my life in which I could afford a car, I could afford rent, and I could afford to not spend 80+% of my monthly income on rent. Little did I know that adjusting my lifestyle to not being ridiculously poor. I'm talking about a person who would have to live off one type of food for extended periods of time. And we're talking about the lowest forms of food, hot dogs, for up to 2 weeks at a time, sometimes months at a time, because I just couldn't afford to buy anything else. And it wasn't living, I was existing at that time for much of my entire adult life. I've either been on the verge of not having enough to eat, not having enough housing, and definitely not having anything to do. It's one of the easiest things I did after I got laid off in 2008 was turn to video games as a coping strategy for reality because there was nothing to do. When all you do is work and go to sleep every single day because there's no money to take time off, there's no money to go on vacation, there's no money for anything other than try to survive another pay period. So when I got to this job, I thought, you know what? I must be middle class. The reality over the past few years has hit me like a ton of bricks. Most of us will never make it to middle class because the jobs that pay for a middle class income don't readily exist for the people looking for them. If you've always thought to yourself, this is going to be the year in which I'm going to get a better job, in which I'm going to do better for myself, I'm going to try harder. And I've shown you over the years that even working three low-level jobs is still insufficient money to get you to a comfortable lifestyle. Three minimum wage jobs per week still won't keep you from going under. Because as I've said, it costs $2,000 a month for rent. That means you need to be making $96,000 per year in order to just have an apartment. And that's not possible for most people. And when I hear people who are making $250,000 per year still struggling to make a living, it boggles the mind. But the reality is that being middle class has become a luxury that most of us will never be able to afford. The myth of the middle class stability has disappeared forever. Most Americans identify as middle class, but 57% can't handle a $1,000 emergency expense. That includes me. As inflation has destroyed my buying power, I, on the average month, do not have enough money in order to withstand a $1,000 emergency. And this frightens me all the time because what do I do if my car suddenly breaks down? If I lose a tire? If because the last time I had to put tires on my car, it cost me over $1,000. Now imagine if that happened tomorrow. Well, guess what I'm going to have to do? I'm going to have to ride the bus to work. or at best, ride my bike. Just like I had to when I first started working there. There was two things that happened to me when I started my current job when it was minimum wage. Number one, I was riding a crappy bike to work. I mean, the crappiest of crap. And then I had to get rid of that. And I was walking to work in the Arizona summer. It was awful. Because sometimes you'd get to work and they would tell you that there was no work. Or sometimes you'd get to work and they'd send you home after a certain amount of time because it wasn't busy or they had nothing for you to do. That was one of the worst things that happens to you when you work in retail. Sometimes they'll put so many people on a shift and then there won't be anything happening. And so they'll start looking and to send people home. So you thought you were going to get a 6 hour shift that turns out to be 2 hours. But guess what? You can't do that back to them. They're allowed to do that to you, but you're not allowed to do it to them. So the gap between the wages and the cost of living has grown so wide that the once middle class is now a luxury lifestyle. And that's no joke. The things that I took for granted as a kid, my annual vacations to go visit my grandparents in the most remote area you could imagine of Mexico, I just thought that was normal. Where you pack up everything and you're gone for up to a month, and that's what you do during the summer. Living in a house, having new cars. I know that as long as I'm alive, I will never own a new car. I will always be driving around in a used car if I can even afford that. Because for a lot of people, new car ownership, just like a home, is just not going to be possible on the wages that you can reach out to grab. Because we all think that it's only a matter of time before we find that one good job, right? That one great job that's going to lift us into the higher middle class, or at least to where we're comfortable, where we live in a nice neighborhood, drive a nice car, and we can actually afford to have a relationship. But even marriage has become a luxury that's not afforded to the lower class anymore. Most proletariat men are not even going to get into the bump and grind sort of relationship because women can tell when you don't have money. And when you don't have money, you become a less attractive partner. Even for the bump and grind, you become a less attractive partner because what do we all see today in the White House? We see weirdo tech billionaires with women. Those guys without their money would be sitting at home, doing what? Because women wouldn't talk to them. They're all strange looking and even stranger people. That's your average proletariat man. But you give him money, and suddenly the women come sniffing around. All right, second talking point. The middle class label, a marketing and political tool. Believing you're middle class makes you more susceptible to buying into financial traps from predatory loans to overpriced products. That's exactly what it does. Predatory loans for everything, right? We're talking about credit cards, you're talking about your car, you're talking about even people taking out loans in order to pay for vacations. I kid you not, I was still in college when I had a friend of mine that I met on Facebook who was working in finance who told me, hey, Millennial Steve, why don't you go on vacation this year by taking out a loan? And I thought, what is she talking about? Why would anyone take out a loan in order to go on vacation? But that's what you do when you're middle class. You want to participate so badly in those activities, knowing full well that you can't afford to take that vacation, but you still want to go to Disneyland. And so it doesn't matter. So you go into a little debt thinking, oh, I'll just pay off this loan as soon as I get back. With what money? As a person that currently lives from paycheck to paycheck to paycheck, there is no extra money to pay for that vacation. But you still want to feel like you're part of that group. You still want to be able to go into your job and say, oh man, Cancun was incredible, or I was in Hawaii and I didn't want to come back. No one in your work wants to hear that you spent 2 weeks sitting on your hands in the dark in your studio apartment because you couldn't afford to do anything. It's embarrassing just thinking about that. How much of a loser you have to be in order to not afford to go on vacation. And I am that loser. I've never been on a vacation, I've never been on an airplane, and I never plan on to because it's just not going to happen. I don't have the resources, I don't have the education, I don't have the contacts. It's not going to happen. You're not going to suddenly wake up one day, go into your couch cushions, and find gold bars. That's not the way that reality works. Most of us have to sacrifice ourselves just to stay alive. And the perfect example of that is the pandemic. Those people who became essential realized very quickly that they weren't just essential, they were disposable. They were disposable. The proletariat in today's time and day realizes that it is also very disposable. We do not have any type of job security whatsoever. Layoffs are coming for American jobs. It's not a matter of when. It's just a matter of it being your time. And there's no way around that because there's an economic slowdown. When there aren't enough people participating in the system because they don't have any money, because they don't have jobs, or because they have really crummy jobs, they can't participate. That means that car manufacturers, housing, housing manufacturing, all the types of things that we need in a consumer society are going to slow down because less and less people can afford to participate in those things. So as that happens, well, guess what? They don't need people working. And that means that you and your job are probably going to suffer. In fact, today, while I was doing my live stream, something came up that I was talking about with the school teacher at the gym today while we were doing cardio. And that's the fact that even school teachers are not immune to the layoffs. As more and more students choose not to participate in public school, because again, there are certain people that think that, well, I'm richer than public school. I need to do more for my children so that they can go to private school, charter school, or teach them at home. So that means that there is less of a need for public school teachers, which means they got to do something with them. Remember, slow down means slow down in the ability to get a halfway decent job. If you're working at Taco Bell, it doesn't matter how great the economy is, how booming they make it seem, that the 4% unemployment rate's amazing. If you're working at Taco Bell, you're suffering right now. You're suffering if you're anywhere making less than, I'm going to raise the ante there from, I usually say $20 and below. I would say that you're even starting to suffer at $30 and below because it's just not enough to keep up with basic living costs. Chasing the middle class ideal is financially dangerous. Many people overextend themselves trying to maintain the traditional middle class image, a house, 2 cars, vacation, and more. The last thing you want to do is spend your life in your own bracket or below, right? People keep telling me this online and in real life that I need to live below my means in order to be able to make it. So living below my means, let's understand, what does that mean? Do I need to get rid of my car? I deleted all my subscriptions to save a few $100s per month. Am I supposed to cut my internet, get rid of my cell phone, stop eating, stop living indoors? What do you want me to cut out? Is housing a luxury? Is food a luxury? Is transportation now a luxury? I think a lot of people would say yes. You need to cut all of those things out of your life so that you can work and be as miserable as humanly possible, but still have a couple bucks in your savings account at the end of the month, but live the worst possible way that you can imagine. At some point, living below your means is going to make you absolutely miserable because now you got to live like a poor person where you're working full time. And that doesn't feel good. In fact, I would say it feels bad to live like that because I've had to live like that, where living at the bottom becomes just existence. You're not eating anything you want to eat, you're barely getting any shelter, and you're riding the city bus. In my opinion, that's not being alive anymore. Living beneath your means that you've already passed away, and some sort of ethereal creature that looks like you is still working that retail job, but understands that nothing good will come of it. All right, rethinking what success looks like. Skilled trades and alternative career paths often provide better financial security than traditional white collar jobs. I don't know why ChatGPT keeps bringing up this tired old point. In fact, I just had this discussion with the school teacher because her older son wanted to go to a trade school to learn how to do engine work. And she said that the trade school wanted $100,000 a year and that would help with placement. And I told her, the place I work for offers the cost of it is half of that. But the placement can be in a job that pays less than $20 an hour. Now, how is that financially good for you? Just because people keep saying that the trades are great doesn't mean the trades are great. Mike Rowe spent an entire career trying to pitch dirty jobs to Americans while being a millionaire. Going and doing a crappy job for a photo shoot and then telling people that this isn't beneath them doesn't seem to be doesn't seem to pass the sniff test to me. In fact, I would say it goes in the opposite direction, telling people that blue collar jobs are just a way of getting people into jobs they don't like. And what's the whole point of getting an education is to do a job that you actually want to do. We spend money. I have 4 college degrees because I didn't want to have to work where I currently work or have to work in a retail job ever again. But guess what? Just because you want something doesn't mean that you're going to get it. I look at all of these women that I have been very physically attracted to these last few days, and I think to myself, oh my gosh, they're there. They should be willing to go out with me. That's not that's not the way that life works. In fact, this morning when I got to the gym, I looked behind me and there was a Victoria's Secret model, and she was just staring at me in her yoga shorts, and I'm just like, where did you come from? Like, it just popped out of some fashion show into the gym, and I'm like, just because you're there doesn't mean that I can participate, right? Just like with a good job. She represents the good job in America. We see those good jobs, we hear about them, but as proletariat men, we don't get to touch that. That's for successful people. Successful people get the good jobs. Unsuccessful, ugly people, poor people, people without friends or means get to take the crummy jobs. It's just the way society works. I don't condone that business model, but it's definitely what's happening in our current society. I will never have a good job in my life. I know that for a fact. Just like that hot chick is never going to give me the time of day. She looks at me, you look deranged, you look crazy, you look broke, and you're just not her type. Just like good jobs aren't the type for the proletariat. And with that said, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I will talk to you guys in the afternoon video when I get back from working out, which I didn't do. I just sat at the gym and I talked to the school teacher for 30 minutes.